My name is Emily, and I'm 32, a single mom living in a quiet Ohio town. Picture this. I'm sitting in a courtroom, my heart pounding as my husband Aaron demands I return everything he ever gave me and our kids. His voice, once warm, now cuts like ice. Those words hit harder than the divorce itself. What kind of man says that? A week later, something happened that left him speechless. Want to know what I did? Stick around. Where are you watching from? Hit like or subscribe if you've ever faced a betrayal that stung. I sat in my kitchen, the kids' drawings scattered across the table, trying to make sense of Aaron's demand. My hands shook as I poured coffee, the mug's warmth, a small comfort against the chill his words left in me. Lily was upstairs, humming softly, unaware of the storm brewing. Max clung to his toy truck, watching me with those big, curious eyes. I forced a smile, but my mind replayed the courtroom. Aaron's voice, sharp and final, demanding everything back. Our couch, the kids' bikes, my old easel. Everything. I'd known Aaron since college, back when he was all charm and big dreams. We met at a campus art show, my paintings on display, his compliments making me blush. He'd talk about building a life together, and I believed him. I traded my paintbrushes for late-night dinners and diaper changes, thinking it was love. 10 years later, here I was staring at a legal letter from his lawyer, listing items like I was some tenant he was evicting. Clara. My lawyer called that morning. Her voice was steady, professional, but kind. Emily, we'll fight this. He can't just strip you bare. But we need to stay calm. Calm? I wanted to scream. How do you stay calm when the man you built a life with treats you like a thief? I thanked her, hung up, and sank into a chair, the weight of it all pressing down. I glanced at the kids. Lily was coloring now, her crayons scratching out a bright rainbow. Max had moved to the floor, his truck zooming in circles. They didn't deserve this. I thought of Aaron's new car, the sleek black sedan I'd seen parked at his office. He'd bought it last month, right around the time he stopped coming home for dinner. I'd asked him about it once, and he'd brushed me off, saying it was a work expense. Clara suspected he was hiding money, but proving it would take time. Time I didn't have with bills piling up. The doorbell rang, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was Hannah, my sister, her face a mix of worry and fire. She stormed in, dropping her purse on the counter. What's this nonsense about Aaron wanting everything back? You need to fight him, now!" Her voice was loud, and I shushed her, glancing at the kids. Lily looked up, curious, but went back to her drawing. Max didn't notice, lost in his game. "Hannah?" I don't know how I admitted, my voice low. "If I push too hard, he might drag this out and the kids." I trailed off, my throat tight. She sat across from me, her eyes softening. "You're not alone in this, but you can't let him walk over you. What's next? He takes their clothes, their beds." Her words stung because they were true. I pictured Aaron's smug face in court, his tailored suit, his certainty that I'd crumble. I stood and walked to the sink, staring out at the backyard. The swing set Aaron built years ago stood there, rusted but sturdy. He'd spent a whole weekend on it, laughing as Lily squealed with joy. "Was that gone too?" I turned back to Hannah. "I found something yesterday," I said, hesitating. "An old sketchbook from college. All my old drawings, plans for galleries, art shows. I gave that up for him." My voice cracked and I hated it. Hannah reached for my hand. "You're still that artist, Em. He doesn't get to take that from you too." I nodded, but doubt gnawed at me. Could I fight him? Should I? The kids needed me steady, not battling their father in court. But the thought of giving in, of handing over pieces of our life like they meant nothing, made my stomach churn. Clara's words echoed, "Stay calm," but calm felt like surrender. I looked at Lily's rainbow, Max's truck, the life I'd built. Aaron wanted to erase it all. I wasn't sure how to fight, but something inside me was shifting, a spark of defiance flickering. I just didn't know what it would cost. Later that evening, I tucked Lily and Max into bed, their soft breaths filling the quiet. I lingered in their room, watching the glow of a nightlight dance across the ceiling. My mind wouldn't settle. Hannah's words kept circling, "Fight him," but fighting meant tearing open wounds I wasn't sure I could close. I shut their door and wandered to the living room where Aaron's letter sat on the coffee table, its typed demands glaring up at me. I hadn't touched it since morning, but it felt alive, taunting. I grabbed my phone and dialed Clara, needing her steady voice. She picked up on the second ring. "Emily, you okay?" she asked, her tone gentle but alert. I paced the room, the hardwood creaking under my socks. "I don't know," I said. "This list, it's not just stuff. It's our life. The kids' books, the dining table we saved for." "How do I even start?" Clara sighed, and I pictured her in her office papers stacked high. "We'll counter it," she said. "But I need you to document everything. Photos, receipts, anything proving what's yours. And Emily, don't let him scare you. That's what he wants." Her words were a lifeline, but they didn't ease the knot in my chest. I hung up and sank onto the couch, staring at the bookshelf Aaron wanted back. It held Lily's favorite fairy tales, Max's dinosaur models, my old art magazines. I reached for one, its glossy cover faded from years of handling. Flipping through, I saw notes I'd scribbled in the margins, dreams of exhibits and studios. Aaron had called them hobbies, not a career. I'd believed him then. Now it felt like he was erasing me all over again. The next morning, I drove to the bank hoping to check our joint account. Maybe there was enough for the electric bill. The teller, a young woman named Paige, gave me a pitying look as she pulled up the balance. "It's down to $112, she said softly. My stomach dropped. Aaron had drained it just like Clara warned. I asked for a transaction history, and Paige printed a sheet showing transfers to an unfamiliar account, thousands gone in weeks. I thanked her, my voice tight, and walked out, the paper crumpled in my fist. Back home, I spread the bank records on the kitchen counter, my hands trembling, the numbers blurred as I fought tears. How could he do this, not just to me, but to Lily and Max? I thought of their faces at breakfast, Lily asking for pancakes, Max giggling over spilled juice. They trusted me to keep things normal. I was failing them. I shoved the papers aside and grabbed a notebook starting Clara's list couch bookshelf bikes. Each word felt like a cut stripping away pieces of our home. Hannah showed up again this time with coffee and a determined look. I talked to Mom, she said, setting the cups down. She's worried about you. I froze. Mom Diane hadn't been close since I married Aaron. She'd warned me he was too controlling, but I'd brushed her off thinking love would fix everything. Now her silence felt like judgment. What did she say? I asked, bracing myself. Hannah hesitated. She thinks you should give Aaron what he wants. Keep the peace for the kids. I stared at her, disbelief burning through me. Peace? He's stealing from us. Hannah backpedaled, saying Mom just didn't get it, but the damage was done. I felt alone, cornered. I walked to the window, staring at the street where Aaron used to park his old truck. He'd upgraded to that shiny sedan, probably paid for with our money. I turned to Hannah. I saw his spending, I said, pointing to the bank records. New clothes, dinner's out? He's living like we don't exist. Her eyes widened, and she grabbed the papers, scanning them. This is proof, Em. Clara can use this. Maybe she was right, but proof didn't fix the ache. I thought of the kids' faces, the way Lily hugged me tighter lately, like she sensed something wrong. I couldn't let Aaron take their security, but fighting meant war, and I wasn't sure I had the strength. As Hannah left, promising to call Clara, I stood in the quiet house, the weight of Aaron's betrayal sinking deeper. He wasn't just taking things, he was taking us apart. The next few days blurred into a haze of sleepless nights and forced smiles for the kids. I stood in the living room staring at the stack of Aaron's demands, now joined by a new letter from his lawyer. It was thicker, colder, listing more items: Lily's stuffed animals, Max's train set, even the microwave we bought after our first big fight. My hands shook as I read it, the words blurring through tears. This wasn't just greed, it was punishment. Aaron wanted to strip us bare to leave nothing of the life we'd built. I shoved the letter into a drawer, my chest tight. Lily was at school, but Max was home sick, with a fever, curled up on the couch with his blanket. I checked his forehead, my fingers brushing his damp hair. "You feeling okay, buddy?" I asked, forcing calm into my voice. He nodded weakly, clutching his toy truck. I kissed his head and turned away, my throat burning. "How do I tell him his father wants to take his toys?" Clara called. Her voice clipped. Emily, Aaron's pushing hard. "He's claiming the kids' things are his because he paid for them. We're filing a response, but you need to stay strong." "Strong?" I wanted to laugh. I was barely holding it together, scraping by on savings while Aaron flaunted his new life. I thanked her, hung up, and sank to the floor, the weight of it all crushing me. I pictured Aaron's smirk in court, his new suits, the way he'd looked at me like I was nothing. I needed air. I stepped onto the porch, the autumn chill biting my skin. Eileen, my neighbor, was raking leaves next door. She waved her gray hair tied back and called out, "You okay, hun?" I managed a nod, but she set down her rake and walked over, her eyes sharp. "You don't look okay." "Talk to me." I hesitated, then spilled it, the new letter, Aaron's cruelty. The fear I couldn't shield the kids. Eileen listened, her face hardening. "My ex was like that," she said. "Took everything, even my confidence. Don't let Aaron do that to you." Her words hit deep, stirring a mix of gratitude and dread. I wasn't just fighting for stuff, I was fighting for us. Back inside, I checked on Max, who'd fallen asleep, his truck still in his hand. I sat beside him, my mind racing. I tried calling Aaron yesterday, hoping to reason with him, but he'd cut me off, saying, "Just do what the letter says, Emily. Don't make this harder." His voice was so cold, like I was a stranger. I thought of the man who'd danced with me at our wedding, promising forever. Where was he now? The doorbell rang, and my stomach dropped. It was Tessa, a friend from our old book club, holding a casserole dish. Her smile was tight, awkward. "Heard you've been going through it," she said, stepping inside. I took the dish, unsure what to say. Tessa and I hadn't talked since Aaron started spreading lies about me being unstable. I'd seen her dodge me at the store last week, her cart swerving like I was contagious. "Thanks," I said, my voice flat. She shifted, glancing around. "Aaron's been telling people you're not coping." I didn't believe him, but... She trailed off, and I felt a stab of betrayal. "But you didn't call me either." I snapped, surprising myself. Tessa flinched, muttering an apology, but it felt hollow. She left quickly, and I stood there, the casserole cold in my hands, anger boiling over. Even my friends were slipping away. I set the dish down and grabbed my phone, scrolling through social media, something I'd avoided for weeks. That's when I saw it, a photo of Aaron at a real estate gala, his arm around a woman in a red dress, her smile sharp and expensive. The caption read, "Celebrating new beginnings." My breath caught. New beginnings. Our divorce wasn't even final, and he was parading her like I'd never existed. I zoomed in, my heart pounding. She was wearing a necklace that looked like one he'd bought me years ago, one he'd said was one of a kind. Had he lied about that too? The anger surged hot and raw, but beneath it was a deeper ache. I wasn't just losing my home, my security. I was losing the man I thought I knew, the life I'd poured myself into. And now he was trying to take the kids' world apart too. I looked at Max still sleeping and felt a fire ignite. I couldn't let this break us. But as I stood there, the new letter's demands looming, I knew this fight was only getting uglier. I sat frozen, the phone still glowing with Aaron's photo, that woman's necklace glinting like a taunt. My chest ached a dull, relentless throb. I wanted to throw the phone to scream, but Max's soft snores from the couch kept me anchored. I set it down, my hands trembling, and walked to the kitchen, needing something to do, anything to stop the spiral. The sink was full of dishes, and I started scrubbing the hot water, stinging my skin. Each plate felt heavier, like it carried the weight of Aaron's lies. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that amplifies every thought. I kept seeing that photo, Aaron's arm around her, his smile so easy, so free. Had he ever looked at me like that? I tried to remember, but the memories were fuzzy, overshadowed by years of his late nights, his sharp words when I asked too many questions. I scrubbed harder, a fork slipping from my hand, clattering to the floor. I didn't pick it up. I couldn't move. Hannah texted asking if I'd called Clara about the bank records. I ignored it. I couldn't face another conversation, another plan. Not now. Instead, I opened the fridge, staring blankly at the half-empty shelves. We were out of milk, and the grocery budget was gone. I shut the door, my stomach twisting. Aaron was at galas buying jewelry while I was counting pennies to feed our kids. The unfairness of it burned a fire I couldn't put out. I went to check on Max, tucking his blanket tighter. His fever was down, but his face looked so small, so fragile. I sat on the floor beside him, my back against the couch, and let the tears come. Silent, choking sobs, the kind you hide so no one hears. I thought of Lily at school, probably laughing with friends, unaware her father was dismantling her world. How would I explain this? How do you tell your kids their dad sees them as line items on a list? The phone buzzed again, this time a call from my mom, Diane. I almost didn't answer, still stung by what Hannah said about her wanting me to keep the peace, but I picked up my voice hoarse. Hey, Mom! She didn't waste time. Emily, I heard about Aaron's new letter. You need to stop fighting. It's not worth upsetting the kids. Her tone was firm, like she was scolding a child. I gripped the phone, my jaw tight. He's taking everything, Mom. Their toys, our home. You think I should just roll over? She sighed long and heavy. Sometimes you have to let go to move on. Think of Lily and Max. I wanted to yell to tell her she didn't understand, but the words caught in my throat. She'd never liked Aaron, but now she was siding with him. Or was she just scared for me, like always? I muttered a goodbye and hung up, the sting of her words settling in. I felt like I was drowning, everyone pulling me under. Tessa's betrayal, Mom's distance, Aaron's cruelty. Even Hannah's push to fight felt like pressure I couldn't bear. I stood and paced, my socks sliding on the floor. The living room felt smaller, the walls closing in. I stopped at the window, peering out at the dark street. A car slowed by, and for a moment, I thought it was Aaron checking on us, or worse, watching. It drove on, but my heart raced, paranoia creeping in. Was he planning something else? Something worse? I remembered a call from last week, a mutual friend saying Aaron was telling people I was unhinged, that I couldn't handle the divorce. The rumor had spread, tainting every glance I got at the park, the store, the school pickup line. I went to the drawer where I'd stuffed Aaron's letter and pulled it out. My hands steadier now, fueled by anger. The list went on my laptop, the kids' winter coats, the lamp we'd picked out for our first apartment. Each item was a memory, a piece of me he wanted to erase. I thought of the church we used to attend, where I'd gone last Sunday, hoping for solace. The pastor had smiled, but the congregation's whispers followed me out the door. Poor Emily, they'd said. Can't keep it together. I hadn't gone back. The clock ticked past midnight, and I was still awake, the letter crumpled in my lap. I heard Max stir a small whimper, and I rushed to him, smoothing his hair. Bad dream, I whispered. He nodded, eyes half open. Daddy was gone, he mumbled, then drifted back to sleep. I stayed there, my heart splintering. Aaron wasn't just gone. He was tearing us apart piece by piece, and I was powerless to stop it. The pain was suffocating, a storm building inside me, and I knew it was only going to get worse. The morning sun barely broke through the clouds as I sat at the kitchen table, a cold coffee mug in my hands. Clara had called at dawn, her voice urgent. Emily, we've got something big. Meet me at my office before the mediation. I'd barely slept, Max's nightmare and Aaron's letter haunting me all night. I got the kids ready, dropping them at Eileen's with a quick hug, promising I'd be back soon. Lily's eyes lingered on me like she knew something was wrong, but I forced a smile and left. Clara's office was a small, cluttered space downtown, papers stacked on every surface. She greeted me with a firm handshake, her eyes bright with determination. We found it, she said, sliding a folder across her desk. I opened it, my pulse racing. Bank statements, emails, screenshots. Aaron had been funneling money into a separate account for months, thousands of dollars, all while claiming he couldn't pay child support. The transfers were labeled consulting fees, but the recipient's name hit me like a punch, Nicole Harper. The woman from the gala photo. I stared at the pages, my hands trembling. This is her, isn't it? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Clara nodded. His girlfriend. We traced the account to her. Aaron's been hiding assets to screw you over in the divorce. The room spun. I thought of his demand to return everything, his smugness in court. It wasn't just about the stuff. He was planning to leave us with nothing to build a new life with, her funded by our family's future. My stomach churned a mix of rage and betrayal, so raw I could barely breathe. Clara leaned forward. This is enough to nail him, Emily. But today's mediation is critical. He doesn't know we have this yet. Stay sharp. I nodded, but my mind was a storm. I pictured Nicole's red dress, her sharp smile, the necklace that mirrored mine. Had Aaron planned this all along? Every late night, every excuse, every fight, was it all leading to her? I clutched the folder, my nails digging into the paper, and stood. Let's go, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The mediation office was sterile, all beige walls and stiff chairs. Aaron was already there, sitting across the table, his suit crisp, his face calm. Nicole sat beside him, her presence like a slap. She wore a tailored blazer, her hair pulled back, but her eyes flicked to me with a glint of disdain. The mediator, a tired-looking man named Paul, shuffled papers and started talking about amicable resolutions. I barely heard him. My focus was on Aaron, his casual posture, the way he avoided my gaze. Clara squeezed my arm under the table, grounding me. Paul asked Aaron to clarify his demands. He leaned forward, his voice smooth. I just want what's mine, Emily. The furniture, the kids' things, the jewelry I gave you. It's only fair. Fair. The word ignited something in me. I thought of Lily's stuffed bunny, Max's train tracks, the life we'd scraped together. I opened my mouth, but Clara spoke first, her tone sharp. Let's talk about fairness, Aaron. Like the account you've been hiding with Miss Harper here. The room went still. Aaron's face froze, his eyes narrowing. Nicole shifted, her lips parting, but she said nothing. Paul looked confused, glancing between us. Clara slid the folder onto the table, her voice steady. We have evidence of asset concealment. Thousands diverted to an account in Ms. Harper's name. I watched Aaron's jaw tighten, a flicker of panic in his eyes. For the first time, he looked small, caught. But then Nicole leaned forward, her voice low and cutting. You're desperate, Emily. Making things up to save face. You couldn't keep him, so now you're playing victim. Her words sliced through me sharp and venomous. I felt every eye in the room, Paul's, Clara's, Aaron's, waiting for my reaction. My hands clenched the folder's edge, crumpling under my grip. I thought of the kids of Max's fever, Lily's quiet hugs. They didn't deserve this. I stood my chair, scraping the floor, my voice shaking but loud. You don't get to talk about my life, I said to Nicole, then turned to Aaron. 10 years, Aaron. I gave you everything, my dreams, my time, our kids, and you're stealing from them for her. Before he could respond, the door opened. Lily burst in her school bag, swinging, tears streaming down her face. Eileen followed, breathless, apologizing. She ran from school, insisted on finding you. Lily threw herself into my arms, sobbing. Is Daddy taking my bunny? I heard him say it. My heart shattered. I held her tight, glaring at Aaron, whose face paled. Nicole looked away, her composure cracking. The room was chaos. Lily's cries echoing, and I felt the world tilt, my anger and pain boiling over, ready to explode. Lily's sobs muffled against my chest, her small hands clutching my sweater. I rocked her gently, my own tears burning, but my eyes stayed locked on Aaron. His face was a mask, pale and rigid, but his hands twitched on the table, betraying him. Nicole's composure had shattered. She stared at the floor, her fingers twisting a ring on her hand. The mediator. Paul cleared his throat, his voice unsteady. Let's take a moment, he said, but no one moved. The air was thick, suffocating, every breath a struggle. I wanted to shield Lily, to carry her out and run, but my legs felt like lead. Eileen hovered by the door, her face etched with guilt. I'm so sorry, Emily, she whispered. She was so upset at school she wouldn't stay. I nodded, unable to speak, my throat raw. Lily pulled back, her eyes red and searching. Why does Daddy want my stuff? She asked, her voice breaking. The question hung there sharp and unanswerable. I smoothed her hair, my heart splintering. We'll figure it out, sweetheart, I said, but the words felt hollow. Aaron shifted, finally meeting my gaze. Lily, this is adult stuff, he said, his tone clipped like he was scolding her. You shouldn't be here. The room spun, my daughter crying in my arms, and he dismissed her like she was an inconvenience. I felt Clara's hand on my shoulder, steadying me, but the rage inside was a wildfire. Don't talk to her like that. I snapped, my voice low but venomous. She's here because of you. Because you're tearing her world apart. Nicole scoffed, a sharp, bitter sound. Oh, please, Emily, don't make this about the kids. You're just mad he's moved on. Her words were a blade slicing through the last of my restraint. I turned to her, Lily still in my arms, and the room seemed to shrink, everyone fading but her. Moved on, I said, my voice rising, trembling. He's stealing from his own children, Nicole. For you. How do you sleep at night? Her eyes widened, but she didn't flinch, her lips curling into a smirk. Maybe if you'd been enough, he wouldn't have needed me. The silence that followed was deafening. Paul stammered something about civility, but it was drowned out by the blood roaring in my ears. I felt Lily tense, her small body shaking, and I realized she'd heard every word. My daughter, 8 years old, hearing this woman say I wasn't enough. I wanted to scream, to lunge across the table, but I held Lily tighter, anchoring myself to her. Clara leaned in, whispering, Emily, don't. We've got him. Stay focused. But focus was impossible. The pain was too raw, too deep. Aaron stood his chair, scraping back. This is ridiculous, he said, his voice loud, now defensive. I'm not the bad guy here. I worked for everything we had, Emily. You just sat at home painting your little pictures, expecting handouts. His words hit like a slap, each one a betrayal of the life we'd shared. I thought of the nights I'd stayed up with sick kids, the dinners I'd cooked, the dreams I'd buried to support his career. And now, in front of Lily, he was rewriting our story, making me nothing. Lily whimpered, burying her face in my neck. I felt her tears soak through my shirt, and something inside me broke. I stood my legs shaky and faced Aaron, my voice a raw, trembling thing. You don't get to do this. I said, each word deliberate. You don't get to lie to steal to hurt her. Look at your daughter, Aaron. Look at what you're doing. He glanced at Lily, and for a split second, I saw a flicker of shame in his eyes, but it vanished, replaced by cold defiance. You're making it worse, he said. Just give me what I asked for, and this ends. Nicole stood too, grabbing her purse. Let's go, Aaron, she said, her voice sharp. This is a waste of time. She shot me a look pure venom, and I saw the bracelet on her wrist glittering another piece of my life he'd given her. My hand went to my neck where the locket he'd given me used to hang. I'd worn it for years, a symbol of his love. Now it was in my pocket, a dead weight. I pulled it out, my fingers trembling, and threw it at him. It hit the table with a dull clink, skidding toward him. Take it, I said, my voice breaking. Take it all, but you'll never take us. Lily's sobs grew louder, and I sank back into my chair, holding her close, my strength draining. Aaron stared at the locket, his face unreadable. Nicole tugged his arm, and they walked out, leaving the room in stunned silence. Paul muttered about rescheduling, but I barely heard him. Lily's cries, the locket's clink, Nicole's smirk, they echoed in my head, a cacophony of pain. I was shattered, exposed with no way out, and the worst part was, I didn't know how to keep going.
Ma.
Drove home from the mediation. Lily quiet in the back seat, her sniffles the only sound. My hands gripped the wheel knuckles white, the echo of Aaron's words, and Nicole's smirk still clawing at me. I glanced at Lily in the rearview mirror, her eyes fixed on her lap, clutching her school bag. I wanted to say something to fix it, but my own heart felt like it was in pieces. When we pulled into the driveway, Eileen was waiting, her face soft with worry. I thanked her, promising to call later, and guided Lily inside. The house was dim, the afternoon light fading through the curtains. I sat Lily on the couch, kneeling in front of her. You okay, sweetheart? I asked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She nodded, but her lip trembled. I don't want Daddy to take my bunny, she whispered. I swallowed hard, forcing a steady voice. He won't, I promise. But the promise felt fragile, like it could crack under the weight of Aaron's demands. I tucked Lily in for a nap, her small body curling under the blanket. In the kitchen, I poured a glass of water, my hands still shaking. The mediation had been a disaster, but Clara's folder, those damning bank records, was a weapon. I couldn't let Aaron win, not after what Lily heard, not after Nicole's cruelty. I grabbed my phone and called Clara, my voice low to avoid waking Lily. What's next? I asked. She didn't hesitate. We file a motion to freeze his accounts, Emily, and we challenge his demands. You ready for this? I paused, the question hanging heavy. Was I? Then I thought of Lily's tears, Max's trust, and nodded, even though she couldn't see. Yeah, let's do it. I hung up and started moving, fueled by a restless energy. I pulled a notebook from the drawer, the same one I'd used to list Aaron's demands, and began writing again. But this time, it wasn't just a defense. I started cataloging every item in the house, not to give back, but to claim. The kids' beds, the kitchen table, my old easel in the attic. Each entry was a small act of defiance, a way to say, "This is ours." I photographed everything, my phone's camera clicking as I moved from room to room documenting our life. As I worked, I thought of Aaron's claim that I'd done nothing, that I'd just sat at home. The words stung, but they also lit something in me. I wasn't nothing. I'd raised our kids, kept our home, loved him even when it hurt. I stopped at the bookshelf, pulling down a photo album from our early years. There we were, young and smiling, Aaron's arm around me at a county fair. I traced the image, then set it aside. That wasn't him anymore. I needed to fight the man he'd become. The doorbell rang, and I tensed, half expecting Aaron. But it was Eileen holding a tray of cookies. "Thought you could use these," she said, stepping inside. Her eyes scanned the notebook, the photos on my phone. "You're fighting back," she said, a proud smile spreading. I nodded, my throat tight. "I have to, for the kids." She set the tray down and hugged me, her warmth grounding. "You're stronger than you know, Emily." When my ex tried to break me, I found ways to push back. Small things at first. "You'll find yours." Her words stayed with me as she left. I sat at the table, the cookies untouched, and opened the notebook again. An idea sparked, something bold, something Aaron wouldn't expect. I started listing items he'd given us, not to return them, but to turn his demand against him. The kids' old toys, clothes I'd worn, thin gifts he'd handed over with half-hearted smiles. I'd packed them into boxes, every item a message: "You can't erase us." I grabbed a pen and wrote a note to include my hand steady now. "You wanted everything back, Aaron. Here's what your love was worth." Lily woke up, padding into the kitchen, her eyes still puffy. "What are you doing, Mommy?" she asked. I hugged her close, feeling a quiet strength rising. "I'm making sure we keep what's ours," I said. She didn't fully understand, but she smiled, and that was enough. I looked at the boxes I'd started, stacking the note in my hand, and felt a fire kindling inside me, ready to burn brighter. The kitchen table was a battlefield of cardboard boxes, tape, and my scribbled lists. Lily had gone back to her room, her footsteps soft on the stairs, leaving me alone with my plan. I moved with purpose now, pulling items from shelves and closets, each one a piece of Aaron's so-called generosity. A cracked vase from our second anniversary, a set of plastic cups he'd bought in bulk, a faded scarf he'd given me one Christmas when he'd forgotten to shop. I packed them carefully, my hands steady, each item a brick in the wall I was building between us. I paused at the attic door, the narrow staircase creaking as I climbed. Dust swirled in the dim light, and I found my old easel folded in a corner, its wood chipped but solid. I dragged it down, my breath short, and set it up in the living room. It wasn't on Aaron's list, but it was mine, a relic of the artist I'd been before I let his dreams swallow mine. I ran my fingers over its frame, a quiet vow forming. I wasn't giving this up. Not now. Not ever. The phone rang, and I flinched, expecting Clara. But it was Tessa, her voice hesitant. "Emily, I need to talk. I messed up believing Aaron. I want to help." I stood still, the scarf in my hand, her words stirring a mix of anger and hope. I'd felt so alone, abandoned by friends who'd bought his lies. "Help how?" I asked, my tone sharp. She paused, then said, "I saw him with Nicole months ago, before you split. He was hiding things even then. I'll tell Clara everything." I closed my eyes, the weight of her betrayal lifting just a fraction. "Okay," I said, "but don't expect me to trust you yet." She agreed, her voice soft, and hung up. I went back to packing, Tessa's call fueling me. I found a box of Lily's old baby clothes, tiny socks, and onesies Aaron had barely noticed. I added them to a box, my jaw tight. He wanted everything. Let him choke on it. I moved to the garage where Max's broken tricycle sat, its red paint chipped from countless rides. Aaron had bought it, bragging about the deal he'd gotten. I hauled it inside, adding it to the pile. Each item was a memory, but also a chain I was breaking. Eileen stopped by again, her eyes widening at the boxes. "You're really doing this," she said, setting a thermos of tea on the counter. I nodded, taping a box shut. "He thinks he can take it all. I'm giving him what he deserves." She poured tea, her hands steady, and shared a story of her own about returning her ex's gifts in a way that made him squirm. "It's not about the stuff," she said. "It's about showing them you're not invisible." I sipped the tea, its warmth spreading, and felt a spark of clarity. This wasn't just defiance. It was reclamation. I grabbed a fresh sheet of paper and kept writing my note to Aaron, the words flowing now. I listed every sacrifice I'd made, the art shows I'd skipped, the nights I'd stayed up alone, the dreams I'd buried for his career. The note grew pages long, raw and unfiltered, but I didn't care. It was for me as much as for him. I folded it, tucking it into the box with the scarf, the cups, the tricycle. I added one last item, a broken picture frame from our wedding, its glass cracked from a fight years ago. I'd kept it thinking it could be fixed. Now it felt right to let it go. Lily came downstairs, rubbing her eyes. "Are we moving?" she asked, her voice small. I knelt beside her, my heart aching. "No, baby. We're staying. I'm just sending Daddy some things." She tilted her head, confused, but didn't press. I hugged her, feeling her warmth, and knew this was for her, for Max, for us. I stood surveying the boxes, their weight a strange comfort. They weren't just junk. They were proof I was still here, still fighting. As the sun dipped low, casting shadows across the room, I sealed the final box. The house was quiet, the kids asleep, the air heavy with purpose. I stepped back, my hands on my hips, and looked at the stack. It was done. Tomorrow I'd deliver them to Aaron's doorstep, my note inside, my truth laid bare. I didn't know how he'd react, but for the first time in months, I felt solid, grounded. I turned off the light, my eyes lingering on the easel, and stood in the dark, my breath slow, my resolve like steel. The morning after I packed the boxes, I loaded them into my car, their weight thudding against the trunk. Lily and Max were at school, the house silent except for the hum of the fridge. I drove to Aaron's new apartment, a sleek building across town, my hands tight on the wheel. The boxes sat on his doorstep, unmarked, my note tucked inside the top one. I didn't linger. I pulled away, my heart pounding, a strange mix of relief and dread settling in my chest. Back home, I waited, the quiet, unnerving. I busied myself cleaning, wiping down counters that didn't need it, avoiding my phone. By noon, it rang, Aaron's name flashing on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, my pulse racing. When I played it, his voice was sharp, almost frantic. "Emily, what is this? You think this is funny? Call me back." I didn't. I deleted the message, my fingers steady, but my stomach churned. He'd seen the boxes, read the note. I'd wanted him to feel something, shame maybe, but now that it was real, I felt exposed, like I'd bared too much. Clara called next, her tone brisk. "Emily, Aaron's lawyer is freaking out. They're saying the boxes are harassment, but we've got the upper hand. The motion to freeze his accounts went through this morning." I exhaled, leaning against the wall. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means he's cornered," she said. "The judge ordered a forensic audit. He can't touch that money now." I nodded, even though she couldn't see a flicker of triumph sparking. But it was muted, overshadowed by the image of Aaron, opening those boxes, my words cutting him the way his had cut me. I walked to the living room, where my easel stood, a canvas now propped on it. I'd started painting last night, just strokes of blue and gray, no plan. It felt good, like reclaiming a piece of myself. But as I stared at it, doubt crept in. Had I gone too far with the boxes? Would Aaron lash out? Make things worse for the kids? I thought of Lily's question about moving Max's quiet trust. I'd done this for them, but the consequences were unfolding, and I couldn't control them. The doorbell rang, and I froze, half expecting Aaron. It was my mother, Diane, her coat buttoned tight against the October chill. She stepped inside, her face a mix of concern and hesitation. "Hannah told me what you did," she said, setting her purse down. "Those boxes." Emily was that wise, I bristled, crossing my arms. "Wise mom. He's trying to take everything. I had to do something." She sighed, sitting on the couch, her hands clasped. "I just worry you're making him angrier. For the kid's sake, maybe you should talk to him." Her words stung, reopening old wounds. She'd always been cautious, urging me to avoid conflict, even when Aaron's control tightened around me. "Talk," I said, my voice low. "He doesn't listen. He never has." Diane looked away, her silence heavy. I wanted her to understand, to see why I'd fought back. But the gap between us felt wider than ever. She stood to leave, pausing at the door. "I'm here if you need me," she said. But it felt like an obligation, not a promise. I shut the door behind her, my chest tight. The house felt smaller, the walls pressing in. I checked my phone again, expecting another call from Aaron, but it was quiet. Too quiet. I pictured him at his apartment, sifting through the boxes, the cracked vase, the tricycle, my letter spilling years of pain. What was he thinking? Was he laughing, plotting, or worse? Feeling nothing, the uncertainty gnawed at me, a cold, heavy weight. I'd struck back, but now I was standing in the aftermath alone, waiting for the fallout to hit. The afternoon dragged, each tick of the clock louder in the quiet house. I stood by the easel paintbrush, idle, the canvas still a mess of blue and gray. My phone stayed silent. Aaron's voicemail, a ghost I couldn't shake. I'd expected more anger threats, something, but the stillness was worse. It felt like waiting for a storm you know is coming. I moved to the window, peering at the empty street, half expecting his car to appear. Nothing. Just bare trees and a neighbor's dog trotting by. Clara texted brief and to the point, audits moving fast. Nicole's distancing herself. Stay patient. I read it twice, the words sinking in. Nicole, the woman who'd sneered at me, was backing away. I pictured her at the mediation, her bracelet glinting, her confidence unshakable. Now she was running. A small victory, but it didn't feel like one. It felt like another piece of my life unraveling, another person slipping out of the story Aaron had rewritten. I set the phone down, my fingers cold. Lily came home from school, her backpack slung low. She dropped it by the door and climbed onto the couch, silent. I sat beside her, waiting. "Teacher asked about Daddy today," she said, finally, her voice small. "Said she heard he's moving away." My breath caught. Moving? No one had told me. I stroked her hair, my mind racing. Did she say where I asked, keeping my tone even? Lily shook her head, picking at her sleeve. "Just that he's got a new house. With someone else." The words landed like stones, heavy and final. I hugged her, my chest tight. Aaron hadn't just hidden money. He was building a whole new life, one that didn't include us. I thought of the boxes on his doorstep, my notes spilling years of truth. Had it changed anything, or had it just pushed him further away? I kissed Lily's forehead and sent her to do homework, needing space to think. In the kitchen, I opened the fridge, staring at the same sparse shelves. The reality hit again. We were still scraping by, and Aaron's frozen accounts didn't pay my bills today. Tessa called, her voice nervous but firm. "Emily, I talked to Clara. Told her everything, dates, places, what Aaron said about hiding money." I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I leaned against the counter, the phone heavy in my hand. Her apology was sincere, but it couldn't erase the weeks of silence, the sting of her avoidance. Thanks, I said, my voice flat. It helps. I hung up, feeling no lighter. Her words were a step, but they didn't undo the loneliness of standing against Aaron alone. I walked to the garage, where a single box remained one I hadn't sent. It held odds and ends, a keychain from our honeymoon, a tie Aaron hated but wore for me. I'd kept it, unsure why. Now I opened it, the keychain's cheap metal glinting. I closed the box and shoved it into a corner, my hands trembling. Letting go was harder than I'd thought. I'd sent him my anger, my pain, but these small pieces still tethered me to him, to the man I'd loved. Max woke from his nap, calling for me. I found him in his room, his eyes bright despite his fading fever. "Can we play outside?" he asked, tugging my hand. I nodded, grateful for the distraction. We sat in the backyard, kicking a soccer ball, his laughter sharp against the crisp air. But even his joy couldn't shake the weight inside me. I kept seeing Lily's face, hearing her words about Aaron moving. The boxes had been my stand, my defiance, but they hadn't stopped him. He was still leaving, still breaking us. As the sun sank, I sat on the grass, Max chasing the ball alone. The cold seeped through my jeans, grounding me. I'd fought back, and it had shifted something. Clara's motion, Nicole's retreat, Tessa's testimony. But the cost was this: my kids hearing rumors, my mother's distance, Aaron's silence. I'd wanted him to feel my pain, but now I was the one carrying it heavier than ever. I looked at Max, his small figure darting across the yard, and felt my heart sink, a quiet ache swallowing the fire I'd built. The courtroom was quiet a week later, the judge's voice steady as she outlined the settlement. Aaron's hidden accounts were exposed, the audit laying bare his deceit. I sat beside Clara, my hands folded, listening as she awarded me the house child support and a fair share of our assets. Aaron wasn't there. His lawyer sat stone-faced, conceding defeat. I should have felt triumphant, but I just felt tired, like I'd run a marathon only to find the finish line was just another road. I drove home, the kids at school, the radio off. The weight of the past months clung to me, but it was lighter now, less suffocating. I pulled into the driveway of our new rental, a small bungalow with peeling paint, but a wide porch. It wasn't the house we'd lost, but it was ours, a fresh start. I carried a bag of groceries inside, the simple act grounding me. Milk, bread, apples, things I could afford again, thanks to the settlement. In the kitchen, I unpacked slowly, the afternoon sun slanting through the window. The counters were bare, but I'd hung Lily's latest drawing above the sink, a bright swirl of flowers. I smiled, tracing its edges. She'd been quieter since the mediation, but her art was blooming, full of color. Max, too, was finding his way, chattering more at dinner, his laughter a balm. I set the apples in a bowl, their red skins glossy, and felt a flicker of peace. We were okay. Not whole, but healing. I stepped onto the porch, a mug of tea in hand, and sat on the steps. The neighborhood was still, kids' bikes scattered on lawns, a faint breeze rustling the trees. I sipped the tea, its warmth spreading, and let my mind wander. I thought of the woman I'd been a year ago, tiptoeing around Aaron's moods, shrinking to fit his world. That Emily felt like a stranger now. I'd fought for my kids, for myself, and though the scars remained, they didn't define me anymore. Eileen's car pulled up, and she waved, carrying a potted plant. "Housewarming gift," she called, climbing the steps. I took the plant, its leaves soft and green, and thanked her. She sat beside me, her presence easy, familiar. "You look different," she said, squinting at me. "Lighter." I nodded, unsure how to explain it. "I'm starting to see past it all," I said. "The anger, the hurt. It's still there, but it's not everything." She smiled, patting my knee. "That's how it goes. You rebuild, one day at a time." We sat in comfortable silence, watching a neighbor jog by. Eileen told me about her garden, how she'd planted bulbs that wouldn't bloom until spring. "Patience," she said. "That's what it's about." I thought of my own patience, the months of waiting, fighting, hoping. I'd learned to trust myself, to stand firm. The plant rested beside me, a small promise of growth, and I felt my shoulders relax, the world a little softer. I went inside, setting the plant by the window. The bungalow was small, but it was ours, filled with the kids' toys, my half-finished canvas, a new kind of hope. I glanced at the clock, knowing Lily and Max would be home soon, their voices filling the space. For the first time in months, I wasn't bracing for the next blow. I was just here, breathing, ready for whatever came next.
My bare feet, watering can in hand. The kids were inside, Max building a tower of blocks, Lily reading on the couch.
I knelt by the small patch of dirt I'd cleared yesterday, where I'd planted seeds with them. Nothing had sprouted yet, but I poured water slowly, the soil darkening under my care. It felt right, this quiet, tending a promise to something unseen. I set the can down and sat back, the evening air soft against my skin. My mind drifted to Aaron, not with anger now, but with a strange clarity. He'd started his visits with the kids, brief, and supervised, his demeanor stiff but civil. I didn't hate him anymore, not the way I had. He was their father, flawed and broken, and I'd let him be that, separate from us. I brushed dirt from my hands, the act grounding final. I was done carrying his weight. The back door creaked, and Max ran out, his sneakers untied. "Mommy, look," he shouted, holding a paper with a wobbly drawing of a house. 3 stick figures smiling. "It's us," he said, pointing. I pulled him close, my heart full. Lily joined us, her book tucked under her arm, and sat beside me. "Can we plant more?" she asked, eyeing the dirt. I nodded, handing her a packet of seeds from my pocket. We dug together, their small hands, eager, the moment simple but heavy with meaning. I thought of the years ahead, the uncertainties still there, bills, school, the kids' questions about their dad. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I'd found my footing, not in winning, but in choosing to keep going. The seeds we planted might not all grow, but we'd try again together. I looked at Lily and Max, their faces lit by the fading sun, and felt a quiet strength settle in me, deeper than any fight I'd won. Eileen's words about patience echoed, and I understood them now. Healing wasn't loud or final. It was these moments, small and steady, building something new. I stood, brushing soil from my knees, and took the kids' hands. We walked inside, their chatter filling the air, and I paused at the door, glancing back at the garden. The dirt was still waiting just like me. I closed the door, my breath, even my heart at rest, ready for whatever bloomed next. The bungalow felt like home now, its creaky floors and chipped paint a comfort. I woke early, the kids still asleep, and slipped into the kitchen to brew coffee. The routine was new, carved out in these quiet months since the settlement. I'd started rising before dawn, not out of worry, but to claim a moment for myself. I sat at the table, the mug warm in my hands, and watched the first light creep through the window, painting the room gold. It was simple, this stillness, but it anchored me. Lily and Max were thriving, their laughter louder, their steps lighter. Lily had joined an art club at school, her sketches filling the fridge with color. Max was reading now, his small voice stumbling over words at bedtime, proud of each one. I'd found a rhythm to teaching art classes at the community center twice a week. The pay wasn't much, but standing before a canvas guiding others felt like rediscovering a language I'd forgotten. My own paintings hung on the walls, bold strokes of color, each one a step toward the woman I was becoming. I walked to the living room where a small desk sat by the window, my new workspace. I'd started writing again, not letters of anger, but stories, fragments of ideas that came in the quiet. It wasn't about fame or galleries. It was about making something mine. I opened my notebook, the pages soft from use, and jotted a line about a woman who rebuilt her life from scraps. It felt true, like writing my own ending. Diane, my mother, had started visiting more, her presence softer now. Last week, she'd brought a quilt she'd made, its patches mismatched but warm. We'd sat on the couch, the kids playing nearby, and she'd spoken of her own regrets, the years she'd stayed silent. "I should have been there more," she said, her eyes meeting mine. I'd nodded, forgiving her not with words but with time. We were mending slowly, like the quilt, stitch by stitch. I stepped outside, the morning air crisp, and checked the garden. Tiny green shoots had broken through the soil, fragile but stubborn. I smiled, kneeling to touch one. The kids would love this, proof their seeds had taken root. I thought of the community center, where my students shared their own stories, divorce loss starting over. Teaching them, listening, I'd found a strength I didn't know. I had a way to give back what I'd gained. The neighborhood woke around me, a car starting, a dog barking. I stood, brushing dirt from my hands, and felt the weight of the past year settle into place, not as pain, but as part of me. I wasn't the Emily who'd trembled in court or packed boxes in rage. I was here, whole in my own way, building a life from the ground up. I walked back inside, the coffee still warm, and sat at my desk, ready to write another line to keep going. The kids' voices drifted from the backyard, a mix of giggles and shouts, as they chased each other through the grass. I stood at the sink, washing dishes, the warm water soothing my hands. The day had been full, a blur of art class grocery runs and Max's school play rehearsal. I dried my hands and leaned against the counter, the house settling around me, its small noises familiar now. I'd built this life, not perfect, but ours, and that was enough. I thought about Aaron, not with the old ache, but with a quiet distance. He'd started his visits with the kids brief and supervised, his demeanor stiff but civil. I didn't ask about Nicole or his new life. It didn't matter anymore. I'd stopped looking for apologies or answers, stopped needing him to see me. I saw myself now, and that clarity was a gift, hard won, but mine. I walked to the fridge, pulling out a pitcher of lemonade, and poured a glass, the tartness sharp on my tongue. It reminded me of summers as a kid, carefree and fleeting, a time I was reclaiming in my own way. Tessa had come by yesterday, her apology softer this time, more real. We'd sat on the porch, sipping coffee, talking not about Aaron, but about her own struggles, her hopes. I listened, not as the friend she'd hurt, but as someone who understood breaking and rebuilding. I didn't trust her fully, not yet, but I didn't need to shut her out. Letting people in, even slowly, was part of this new me, open, but not naive, forgiving, but firm. I stepped outside, the lemonade glass cool in my hand, and watched Lily and Max. Lily was braiding grass into a crown, Max digging a hole with a stick, both lost in their own worlds. I sat on the porch steps, the wood worn under me, and felt a stillness settle. The fight with Aaron had stripped me bare, but it had also shown me what I could carry. My kids' trust, my own resilience, a life built on my terms. I wasn't defined by what I'd lost, but by what I'd chosen to keep. The lesson came to me slowly over months in moments like this. Pain doesn't just break you. It shows you where you're strongest. It's not about winning or being right. It's about standing up again and again for what matters yourself, your kids, the small joys you stitch together. I learned to let go of shame, to see my worth, not in what others took, but in what I gave. I gave love patience a home, and that was more than enough. I looked at the sky streaked with pink and gold and took a slow sip of lemonade. The kids ran to me, grass-stained and breathless, asking for a story. I pulled them close, their warmth grounding me, and started telling one about a woman who found her way. As their eyes widened, I knew this was my truth. My victory, quiet but real. What's a moment that showed you your own strength? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. If this journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, or share it with someone who might need it. Thank you for being here, for listening. Here's to healing, to new beginnings, and to finding peace in your own way.